To our sponsors and partners, thank you for participating. Next is a presentation on creating robust, scalable, and connected enterprises with IoT platform as a foundation by the Director of Solution and Innovation at Software AG. He has been with Software AG for over 10 years and prior to that with other similar enterprise solution providers for a total ongoing career of more than 24 years. He focuses on achieving customer and partner success, applying both business understanding of the needed and desired outcomes, and delivering technology and business solutions to achieve these needs and desires. Please welcome Gareth Whiteaker.
Hello everyone, can you hear me okay? All good, cool. So yeah, this is quite a mouthful of a topic I was given to align to, but in summary, basically it's going to look at learnings that we've had across many customers and partners, how we've helped them deliver value, additional revenue streams or value adds on top of commoditized business, which I think is quite important in the infrastructure and communication spaces especially. So we live in a truly connected world. Basically everything these days, people, systems, your car, whatever it may be, everything is being connected and everything has become a source of data. So that obviously leads to a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. We've also seen a lot of tectonic shifts within organizations because all these different pieces of the organization are combining and have access to this information that can possibly provide value. But there's a lot of things that you need to do to achieve this, right? So a lot of expectations are also created for things like connected customer experience. The customer wants to experience one particular journey throughout the organization, no matter what kind of touch points you're actually engaging with. Obviously, the transition to cloud, to SaaS models, to infrastructure as a service, and that has brought with it its own challenges and opportunities as well. And the digital business excellence, customer expectations as well. If I can get this from one provider or from one thing within my life, why isn't everyone treating me like that? So that's also, as well as opportunities, has created a lot of challenges within the organizations. So what do you think makes an enterprise truly connected? It's when you can take all those different aspects of the business, all the different data sources, all the systems, the people, the software, whatever it may be, and rapidly orchestrate them together in any combination so that you can move on opportunities and offer your customers both what they're asking for and need, but also new offerings and revenue streams within that. And some of the examples we'll look at is where customers of ours have moved from a very commoditized business to a completely different business model, even though they still do the same thing. So obviously within this digital world, we all need to outpace the competition to be more agile, to be able to do that a lot faster for our businesses to thrive and in some cases survive. So some of these business challenges, obviously, that we're seeing in the space and we heard as commonalities across a lot of the customers, a lot of the partners, is, a lot of it is the opportunity cost or the loss of not doing things with what you already have or that your competitors are doing. So for example, a lot of organizations they've got a lot of data, but they've got it in various different places, it's very disparate. Maybe it's not integrated, maybe they just don't have access to it across the entire value chain. And there's quite a large opportunity cost in that in not monetizing that data, whether it's internal to the organization or across your partners and your customers. There's a lot of operational efficiency gains, right? Labor costs are rising, parts costs are rising, especially even manufacturing process or delivering a service is just getting more and more expensive. But there's a lot of efficiencies that can be gained once you can actually have that view into that and see how you can make them more efficient, how you can make it faster and thus cheaper. There's also a lot of challenge, and this is quite a common one we've heard from a lot of customers, whether it be in the telco space, the infrastructure space, their customers coming to them and asking them what can they do for them with their data. But just in general, not being able to do these things very quickly when a customer comes and asks, or once you notice an opportunity in the market, becomes quite a challenge for them, because it means someone else gets their business, someone else gets to eat their lunch. There's also the lack of business continuity. Now, this is something especially during COVID that we saw was a big challenge for customers. Those who could remotely access and see and control parts of their organization were in a much stronger position than those who couldn't. That someone had to physically go somewhere and look at something or do something, because they just hadn't yet got to that point where they had that connectivity, they had that access to the machines, to the data centers, whatever it may be. And obviously, quite a big one we hear a lot about is the limited or no enterprise diversification. I mean, a lot of customers, the spaces they're in has become very commoditized. They do something, so do 27 of their other competitors, and they all do the same thing. So churn is quite large, because whether I do it with with A or with X, doesn't really matter. I can move around because there's nothing different you're giving me. You're not putting any additional value on top of that. And especially, as I say, within the communication service providers, within infrastructure, we've seen that with a lot of customers where they have sold everything they can sell and they are selling what they can sell. Now they need to reorchestrate that and offer additional value on top of that to stand out and also bring in new revenue streams for their businesses. There's a lot of technical challenges when they're trying to do that, a lot of unnecessary complexity, especially, in this challenge, as we're talking about now in the IoT space. We find a lot of customers have ended up pigeonholing themselves into a corner, becoming victims of their own success. They do one thing and it works very well, but their solution or technology or the way they've designed it really only does that one thing. Now, the moment they need to do a second thing or a third thing, or a customer comes to them and says, well, what about, can you do this for us? It means they now have to add another solution. They have to add something else. And rapidly, one or two things becomes 25 things that they're administering, they're managing, they're supporting, they're trying to train people on. It becomes quite difficult for them, and actually has the reverse effect of adding more costs than it does more revenue streams. I said the second one, the commonality, and this is a big one we hear all the time, especially in the communication service provider space, is my customers have come to me and asked me, well, you're already providing the SIM cards for me, or you're already providing the connectivity, the fiber. Can't you just give me the other bits as well? And a lot of the time, unfortunately, that answer is no. We can do this, but that's all we do, or we do bits and pieces of it. And then maybe they try and create something from scratch, but by the time that's happened, they found something else, So it's very much about being able to handle that quickly and what the customers are expecting. Also, one of the challenges, the biggest challenges in IoT, is this unquantifiable value, and this is something we're going to be talking about repeatedly throughout this, is when people want to invest in it, they expect you to already know upfront 100% what it's going to return. But the benefit of the kind of thing is once you start orchestrating that data, that's where you find out what the real value is or what you can do with it. A lot of the best solutions and the best offerings that have gone out to the market in the space have literally come once the data was flowing. But you don't get to invest until the data is flowing, so you end up in a catch-22. So how do you overcome that is something also we're going to be looking at. And operational interruptions, this ties back to that point of if you can't have that visibility the whole time, remotely connected into your enterprise, what could bring it down that you're not going to be able to control very quickly? And again, if you don't have it enriched with all that data, and I don't mean just from the devices or the IoT space, if the data is not linked to the rest of your data within the organization, to your systems, to your billing, to your customer systems, you're not making a complete decision, you're not having that full viewpoint, and that's also something that can hold you back in the sorts of endeavors. And the other thing is obviously that is driving the complexity is obviously the customers themselves. People get used to certain experiences, you know. Why is it that if I want to get a ride from the hotel to the convention center, I literally just whip out my phone, boom, 2 minutes later I'm in a car, I'm traveling. If I want some entertainment or I want to go and do a monetary transaction, I can just do that instantaneously. But then as your customer, when I come to your business and ask you for a similar experience, a lot of the times the feedback is, well, I don't feel like I'm living in a digital world, or I'm not getting that experience from you as a customer. And there's a lot of technologies that are coming together to also drive that complexity and drive the opportunity. So not just obviously the Internet of Things, adding in the devices and the additional data streams, but how do you combine that with the process automation, with the machine learning that will actually tell me what's happening and what that's going to translate into, not just from a technical sense, but also in terms of rands and cents. And a lot of customers transitioning, maybe not as fast as we would expect, but in a lot of areas, moving those infrastructures from this traditional on-premise inside their organizations to hybrid models and to clouds. And obviously, another one that's driving that complexity is, well, how do you bring this into your organization, but also how do you get your people involved in that? They need to be trained up. They need to understand it. They need to really drive it. And how do you make that simple for them? How do you make them want to do that? Is quite a complexity. And a lot of this is converging, there's, as much as I hate the overuse of the word paradigms, of that full digitization of your organizations. How do you take what you've got and now add additional value on top of that? How do you do those new business models? How do you give your customers the experience they're looking at? And what we find with that is a lot of customers are transitioning to this everything as a service. It's no longer just the infrastructure or the cloud or the traditional service you're delivering, but how do you recombine that very quickly, and how do you actually then feed that? And one of the natural progressions obviously has been into that Internet of Things space that's feeding in all those additional data sources and allowing you then to offer it rapidly, spin it up, and offer that as a service to the customers. And obviously, what is the value of IoT? The value of IoT is not the gizmos, the gimmicks, the devices, the whatever. It's what information is it giving you. And I say information, not data, because obviously information is data in context. But the first important step is obviously getting the data flowing. Whether that be from your fleet, from your vehicles, the refrigeration units on your trucks, your buildings, your heating, your water, directly from the cheese factory, in one of the examples we'll be looking at. But how do you actually get that free flow of data going in real time and then actually do something with it? And importantly, obviously make sure it's integrated into your organization. One of the largest, in the studies, if you look at the various analysts, causes of failure within IoT projects is that lack of integration. They stand alone, they do something, but because it's not a full flow within your business processes, it doesn't end up delivering the full value and getting you the most revenue out of that systems. So the key thing is very much getting that data flowing, but making sure it's flowing bidirectionally all the way through the organization. And obviously the typical kind of things that can deliver for you then is what you would expect. The standard, reduction in costs, increase in efficiencies, allowing you to engage new customers that you wouldn't have had before, because a lot of times you look at your organization and say, this is what we do, that's all that we do, and these are the people that we deal with. But it does get to a point where then, well, you've tapped out the market. We offer one thing and that's what it does. But if we just combined a bit more, added a bit more on top of that, we can actually keep doing what we're doing. And I mean, there's some good cases I'll go through where business models have completely changed, even though the company has just stayed doing exactly what they do, but now they get a lot more money for it because of the additional value in that they offer to the customers. So 3 very important numbers in this space, I think. The first is $11 trillion by 2024, according to McKinsey in the IoT space. So that's a lot of money, and it would be nice to have a slice of that. I mean, no matter how small a slice of 11 trillion, it's still a slice of 11 trillion. However, 88% of IoT projects fail, according to the research, and especially in this instance, cited from Beecham Research. But why do they fail? I mean, why is it that so many people are trying this and not being successful with it? However, 80% of that remaining 12% who have not failed in their IoT implementation have stated that they get a lot more value out of it than they expected in the first place. So not only did they get the value they were expecting, but they then found a lot more opportunities, a lot more value for their organizations. So what are some of these challenges that contribute to that 88% failure in IoT projects, initiatives within organizations? So one of them is speed, and that's actually 2 different factors, right? The first is speed of being able to actually do something with it. How quickly can you get something up and going? And more importantly, how quickly can you monetize it? Because obviously, that is the key aspect of trying new things and giving those new offerings to your customers. The other thing is, where it comes to speed, the second side of that is not becoming a victim of your own success. What we've seen with a lot of IoT projects in the market and studies and analysis is you'll find someone who does something with IoT and it works really well. In fact, it works too well. And by that I mean they build something to do one thing, and it does that thing. And it's really good, and everyone loves it, and it sells like hotcakes. But the problem is it wasn't built to handle those sorts of volumes or to do more than what it can. And eventually it starts creaking and groaning at the seams because it can't scale. It doesn't, it's got a limited size, and that's what it does. We baked 12 hotcakes, we sold 12 hotcakes. It doesn't matter if we've got 1 million people asking for hotcakes, we've only got 12. The other one, as I've mentioned already, is integration. So running in isolation can offer some value, but until it's tied into the actual core of what your business does, until it flows through your systems, draws the information from them, combines the devices and all the new information you're getting with the previous historical and streaming information, it doesn't go as far as it should. And it's only once it becomes part of the organization, it's part of your actual business process, part of that DNA, that's really where you get a lot of that value out. Likewise, the data flowing through has to offer value. It's not worth doing just to get interesting things, cool facts. It's like, what can we actually do with that data? How can we combine it? Either that we can then monetize it on, sell it, or based on now the data flowing through and the combination and the analysis and that, what new opportunities does that give us? What new things can we sell, can we make, can we optimize, can we save? And like I said, the catch-22 of IoT always. We're not going to actually do anything or invest it or try it because there's a perception that obviously it's very expensive to start, it's a lot of effort, and the only way we're going to do that is if we already know up front how much money it's going to make us. But if we already knew up front how much money it was going to make us, why weren't we doing it all along? So these are a lot of the factors to overcome to become part of that 12%, part of the disruptors who have embraced IoT and been successful with it, getting that revenue out of there. So whether you're looking at it from a point of business optimization or transformation, of the business, whether it's just to improve your productivity, to give your customers a better experience, keep the machines that you are leasing to them or the infrastructure you're running for them a lot more efficient, a more uptime, a lot less impact. Whether you're moving into those new business models, those new revenue streams, those taking what we do today anyway and just getting a lot more money out of it by slight value adds or even great value adds on top of that, new products and services. But I think there's three main principles across all of those that really apply. The first is start small and scale first. We don't need to know already, this is exactly what we're going to get out of it, this is how much it's going to give us, thus it's worth putting it down. You can start small, but the important thing is the scalability as well. Don't paint yourself into a corner, don't pigeonhole yourself into one solution that does one thing that only produces those 12 hotcakes. Failing fast is not failure. Again, because you can start small, you can move rapidly, and you could try out a bunch of things. If it doesn't work, who cares? It didn't cost you very much, throw it away. When it does work, and you get to that very quickly through the iteration, then it pays for itself many, 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 many times over. And being able to deliver that value very, very quickly. That is the most common gripe we've seen in people who've come to us and we've been successful with is they just couldn't move fast enough. They just couldn't adapt to customer requests or market changes that they needed to implement and bring that out together. So what are those building blocks for IoT success? I mean, obviously from an IoT platform and from an IoT technology perspective, there's obviously the different layers that you need to have no matter what you do, right? That's the management of your devices, the connectivity, being able to do that no matter where it is, no matter how poor the connectivity is, the full flow and security of the data, the analytics, be it just cool dashboards that are showing you right now how your business is performing, or full analysis compared to the history and fed through the machine learning to give you those new insights, to give you those new offerings and capabilities. And the ability to orchestrate all of that together as applications to now offer to the customer. Whether you are merely providing the infrastructure and now white labeling and on-selling this solution to people who will build their own solutions, or whether you're offering them something very specific. Those are the rough structures, and layers that you would have anyway. Once you've got that all defined, then making it successful, there's a couple of key points as well on top of that. The first is obviously your go-to-market strategy and the business model. Now that you have that capability, the insights, whatever, what are you going to do with it? What are your ambitions? How big do you want to go, or where do you want to stop? Where is going to be the most valuable spaces for you to play in those areas? Who are you going to do that with? Who are going to be partners, customers, etc.? Once you've then got that going, it's also getting the right partners. So how do you identify the partners who's going to be a part of that? Sorry, time check, but yeah. Okay, get the right partners, start that up. I'm going to go into hyperspeed chipmunk mode because apparently I only have 5 minutes left, but we only started it. Anyway, okay. Then what solutions are you going to offer to the customers on top of that with the partners' solutions, devices, infrastructure, etc.? How do we enable your people to sell it, or your partners to do that joint marketing, your demand generation, etc.? And how do you onboard the customers into the solution and give them that customer experience management so that they appreciate the full solution throughout? You also then, especially in the infrastructure and communication service provider space, determine, are you going service-centric offerings or infrastructural-based offerings? Now, obviously, they each have their benefits and downsides, and you can do both. Service-centric, obviously, you need a lot more data, a lot more domain-specific knowledge in that space. Whereas infrastructure capability, you can provide that platform to them and let them build the solutions and offer it to their customers, their partners, etc. Obviously, it's not just all about benefits and rewards and things like that. You will have your anticipated costs, both from an infrastructure point of view, software, installation, implementation, connectivity, and then obviously physical devices as well. And then your revenue sources will either be, as we said, specific use cases that you're offering through IoT, or white labeling the platform and offering that as an offering to your customers. And we have this with many different customers in different spaces. So a lot of customers, especially telcos, CSPs, etc., just white label and on-sell the platform to great benefit to themselves, whereas others offer specific use cases. So one of the biggest challenges is obviously accessing and analyzing data that will drive innovation. That data is everywhere, but not very accessible. So that can lead to poor decision-making within the organization. And the ability to be able to connect anything, do that self-service, and have that single glass pane view into the organization will give you that operational efficiency and help you make those right business decisions. A couple of examples, painting robots in a factory. Before, it's very expensive. If there's any errors made, it goes downstream. It's very costly to redo that work and pull that through. The moment they actually started to get real-time data flowing, visualization, and automation with machine learning, they could actually see as it was happening if there was going to be a problem. And there was a net decrease of 50% in the cost per car of spraying that thing, which is the most expensive part in their production process. Likewise, whether you're talking about food security or delivering, even in retail, direct from the dairy, they had a lot of challenges with, there was no way to measure that throughout the entire live stream, the optimization of the pickup and delivery, when is something ready, when is it optimal to be transported, etc., was causing a lot of unnecessary costs. So there's a lot of benefit to them to be able to do that all the way straight from the cow to the customer and be able to optimize that full live stream. Improving people's lives, real-time pollution monitoring, being able to make sure that as these things are going around, they could actually then give them that insight and control to make sure that the citizens are not the ones reaping, the poor pollution levels and things like that because of a lack of optimization of maintaining the fleets. I think I'll skip through a bunch of these because we have covered it, talking about making the most of your thing, making it as easy as possible for your staff, for your people, not having to maintain multiple systems, multiple solutions, but being able to do things through one easy-to-use interface. Gardner Denver is always a good one I like to talk about because they actually compressor manufacturer, and they got into sort of a rut in that their market was very saturated, is very commoditized. So whatever they offer to the customers, it's very flat. The amount of money they could make off it, what they could charge, etc. The moment they could instrument that, do real-time predictive maintenance, but they found a second benefit to it. That was the original intent. The second benefit was, our customers don't actually care about having a compressor. All they care about is the compressed air. So what if we just offer them air as a service? And now you can transition the revenue model as well as the maintenance and optimization of that delivery, and they could make a lot more money out of doing exactly what they were doing all along. Same for your refrigeration, your transportation throughout the supply chain. Sorry, in the interest of time, I'm just going very quickly. And full automated building management, being able to offer that to customers through their infrastructure for the buildings that they are leasing from you anyway, or the infrastructure that you're bringing in. As I mentioned, a lot of the telcos around the world utilizing the platform for exactly that, either on-selling the on top of their infrastructure to get additional value, additional services, additional revenues, fully white labelable, as well as, for example, a telco, as well as on-selling the thing. I can't actually see that far, so sorry. Cool. I'll wrapping up. Yeah. I feel like I'm being cheated out of some minutes here, but it's cool. So doing full water management, water detection, etc. Full machine management, a lot of factories, a lot of industrial customers using that for optimizing the machinery, the manufacturing process, etc. And the fact that you can do multiple use cases through one system means that you're getting a lot more out of that investment, that you can offer multiple different solutions, multiple different things. So just to wrap that up, who are we? We're Software AG. We've been in business since 1969. I always say fantastic technology, and half the world runs on us and we should shut down if we turned it off. And how many of you have heard of us before? So that is something we are working very hard on, both locally and globally. We have so many customers doing fantastic things. And I always say we're the best kept secret ever. But hopefully now you know the secret. So our corporate strategy, our products allow customers to do a digital backbone, connecting all of their systems, all of their data, all of their devices, their business processes, etc., and harmonizing that together to give them that maximum revenue return from their offerings. We've got a massive, in the IoT space, especially massive diversity of partners, customers, technologies, etc., and we're hoping that obviously you will become part of this slide and part of our ecosystem, bringing that all together. The analysts think we're pretty good as well. I mean, we're always rated in all our spaces we play in, leaders or leaders of the leaders, be it Forrester, Gartner, Mccann. And Cumulocity is our platform, fully platform-based, has everything you would need to do any IoT solution. And I always say I'm the only one who can say that because I know someone's going to come and make me and the team do it. So we can do all of that. And as I will be wrapping up with, you can even go and try it online yourself for free. Go and get a free 30 days or reach out to us and see that it's not just on the slides, it's also out there in practicality. And we have tons of customers who would be willing to vouch for that as well. Full platform that can do any type of IoT use case, any type of device, any type of communication thing. The only thing we don't do, obviously, is the connectivity layer, which is where we partner with the telcos, the fiber providers, etc., and the device manufacturers. And fully true multi-tenancy, scalability, highly available. Again, start off small and scale as big as you want, as much as you want, because that's where the value is, right? You're getting paid for it, so you need to know that it's going to grow with you. And that's a traditional journey, saying start off small, phase one, maybe you're just doing remote monitoring, all the way through to your disruptive business models and how we work that journey with you. As I said, full platform that can do all of those different things, and there's just a few key differentiators, which I'll leave on the screen for a few seconds as I do my last 2 or 3 slides. But you need to know that it's fully secure, fully scalable, fully tenant-based, fully white-labelable, can connect to anything you've got, even if it came off the arc or its brand bleeding edge. And we have a lot of customers getting that value from that end-to-end IoT solution, no matter what industry they may be in, serving a lot of the world's largest brands. So as I said in closing, more importantly, what's the opportunity cost of not innovating? Who are your competitors who are going to be bringing out those new services, those offerings, and that? So it's not about what is the cost of doing something, it's the cost of not doing something that is really the challenge. Also, Forrester did a full total economic impact report on our solution. They went and interviewed customers all around the world, and that'll lay out all the money. So again, the technology is very important, but if it doesn't actually deliver revenue to you, then what's the point? So go and have a read of that, or we can send you a link. It's a very good report. It goes into all the minutiae, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that'll tell you about the solution. And like I say, take a test drive. You can go right now to softwareag.com, cumulocity.com, cumulocity.cloud, click the button, get a free trial, it'll spin up, try it to your heart's content. Thank you.
Next is a presentation on quantifying the impact of COVID-19 on data usage by the head of interconnection and peering at Terraco and NAP Africa. She is a key member of the Terraco team that has developed and grown the NAP Africa Internet Exchange to the largest IXP in Africa, focused on servicing sub-Saharan Africa, and the head of interconnection and peering at Terraco and NAP Africa. She has a passion for peering, content and career creation in Africa, and has a key understanding of the opportunities and challenges within the African market, as well as experience with diversification for a global market. Prior to Terraco, she served as commercial director at Arc Telecoms. Her role included development of new infrastructure focusing on delivering ISP product and services to the market. Currently, a key strategy focus for her is on relationship development with new and existing Terraco carriers and content providers in order to grow future opportunities locally and internationally. Please welcome Michelle Mccann.
Sure, that was very long. Didn't realize it did that stuff. Anyway, so today I didn't really want to focus too much on the COVID thing, because I know we've all heard it probably over and over again. So what we kind of did is we've taken a look back in history, because I think it's always important to look back from where we've all come and how hard we've actually worked to be able to get our country and surrounding countries probably through quite one hell of a pandemic. So if I kind of take a step back and, looking at this sort of a history is, from the first IP address kind of going live in South Africa to ADSL going live to subsea cables, internet exchanges going live, there's been a huge amount of work that us as an industry have actually put together to make South Africa quite a success. And it's pretty much a really good poster child to a number of the other African countries. So, a lot of my colleagues sit across the table from various other internet exchange points where they say, how did South Africa be able to achieve this? I think one of the key points in our history, which is what pretty much started a company like a Terraco, started a number of your networks, was the deregulation within the market. And I see some of the oldies in the room will very much remember that as quite a changing time. And what that effectively did was allow us to, right now, as South Africa, have over 250 network operators, which then once again allowed things like an internet exchange point to exist and huge amounts of capacities to start coming in from a subsea cable and terrestrial network side. So yes, we are online. So sometimes we feel like we're not, especially during load shedding. But as in Africa, we're online. We're starting to see this growth increase on an ongoing basis. And you'll see some graphs in terms of how COVID actually, and on the exchange point, how we saw a huge amount of capacity to sort of like this tsunami wave of data come through and hit us. So you and I are all seeing this on an ongoing basis, where we're seeing more and more users get connected. We're seeing it from a data center point of view, we're seeing it from an exchange point of view, and we're seeing it from our customers, the fiber operators, the mobile operators, and all the innovative technologies that are having to be put in place to be able to support these users. One of these being obviously the mobile networks. What I'm very interested to see and kind of watching this future, we all talk 5G and where that's going, but it'll be amazing to see how we can start servicing rural economies. We know there's challenges around that, being in terms of LSM measures and how we're going to do that, but it's going to be fundamental for us as a South African example to the rest of Africa on how we can get this network all the way through to the rural environments. In terms of last mile growth, and I see the Frogfoot people are here, so they'll probably attest to this one and how challenging it has been. But there's been a huge amount of growth in terms of fiber infrastructure going into the ground. One of the things that we're actually starting to see, and I was chatting to some of our Kenyan colleagues earlier today, is around how, we've got a huge amount of the subsea cable infrastructure coming in, but how do we actually start cross-bordering with each other as countries? And how do we start leveraging each other's infrastructure, between us and, let's say, a Botswana or a Mozambique or Zimbabwe, etc. So similarly with like a Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and start creating these key hubs within Africa so that we're not also duplicating investment. So on the data center side, so an interesting statistic that my colleague was telling me, that as of today, there's been over 200 megawatts of investment that's actually happened in data center infrastructure in South Africa. So you can see there's been a huge curve that's kind of gone up, primarily driven by the large cloud operators who have come and invested in our shores in South Africa. And I suppose the question is, why South Africa? Why have they come here? You know, why not Swaziland or something like that? But typically it's because of, A, that deregulation that started happening in the country, so then it allowed them to be able to reach multiple network operators. In terms of, believe it or not, South Africa versus a number of the rest of Africa, we actually have quite a stable power economy. And then obviously from our GDP growth. So as a South Africa, we actually have quite a healthy GDP market. So when you're reading the news, you know, you sort of think this can't be true, but taking a step back, you're starting to see a lot of like Microsoft and Amazon, Google, starting to invest a lot of money in our shores. So I found this picture, which I kind of like. So if you have a look there, there's even like a little ox wagon there. So this is the old cable landing station in Durban. And kind of there's the Terrico data center facility. So it's amazing to see how data centers have changed over a period of time. And I mean, I've even seen it from walking into, you know, work where we had gumboots and kind of strolled in and didn't realize, you know, what was health and safety, to now going into a Terrico where, you know, you have to go do the proper right at work kind of procedures and all of those things. Times have really changed. And looking at other data centers globally, so I've been to a couple of data centers in Europe, US, you know, seeing this kind of investment happen in South Africa is amazing, because what you see out of Terrico or any of the other data centers, you would actually typically see overseas. So it's quite phenomenal to see that happen. Then the big exciting thing that's happened, and I'm sure you've all seen it on the news, so Equiano has landed. To Africa is on its way, and I suppose what does this actually mean? And if you kind of look back, you know, 12 years, we sort of had SAT3 and SAFE, and we were running on these really, really small cables with not much content invested here locally within South Africa. And I sort of remember the days when you posted a Facebook picture, you left it overnight, and then your buddies would know you were at the party the day before. You know, now immediately you post something and something's happening immediately. And why is that actually happening? It's because this content is here. It's on our shores, it's within a data center with these large cable systems being able to fill those caches, which is then servicing these end users with key content that they need on a day-to-day basis. So here's actually an example of the cable. I won't mention whose hands those are holding the cables. But so the first one, the larger one, and you can actually see how technology is kind of changing, you know, SAT1, SAT2, and then Equiano that landed a couple of months ago. I still feel for those guys, you know, laying the old cable in pretty much a rowing boat. So it's quite phenomenal to think now you've got submarines, etc., laying those things. So public cloud investment, and this is kind of the way we see Africa evolving. You kind of see these hubs starting to develop. So South Africa has become a hub already, and you know, we can see it from the internet exchange points where there's sort of 26 different surrounding African countries picking up content and cloud on a daily basis. Then you're starting to see Kenya emerge as this East African hub, servicing that region. And then you're seeing Nigeria forming this West African hub. And then the north you'll see is still quite open. And that's going back to that point that I raised earlier, is around deregulation, open marketness, and easy for content and cloud guys to be able to land and service that market. So pretty much North Africa is picked up from Marseille. There are some emerging markets coming out of there, which will be interesting to see, you know, what happens with Egypt is the hot topic at the moment. But yeah, in terms of Africa and latency and hubs, this is how we're seeing this evolve. Why are the cloud providers here? So I hope you guys can see it. It didn't come out great on this side. But if you start looking at South Africa versus rest of Africa, there's a huge amount of business, you know. We are all busy trying to sell to these guys on a day-to-day basis. But if you take a step back of GDP of South Africa versus Kenya, Nigeria, it actually becomes really attractive for these large cloud guys to land on our shores. And what we did around cloud, and actually we wanted to test it. So here we did, this was on Microsoft's backbone. So we did a latency test when they landed, and we wanted to see, you know, what does it feel like to actually hit the international region versus the local region. So we did a full round-trip test, and it was 171 milliseconds if we went to Europe versus 2 milliseconds when we hit it here locally. And you guys are probably thinking, what is the relevance with this and COVID? And what we felt during that COVID period was there was a race to our cloud on-ramps that are sitting in Jericho. Because immediately people were sitting where they had a server room sitting out there, and they kind of said, hang on, I don't have a proper DR strategy. I didn't realize this was coming. Suddenly a health official walks in because I've had an outbreak at the office, you know, and they shut my data center down. You're not going to stop a health official and say, please don't turn off my office. He doesn't care. So what we actually saw was over a 60% increase in cloud connections over that period of time, and still growing, because it basically helped that leapfrog into the cloud. So that's funny enough for our cloud exchange. So we've got Africa Cloud Exchange, which is not unique. I'd like to say we fancy and came up with something cool. Not really. It's something that actually happens all across the world. But you'll see that cloud on-ramping is actually starting to really emerge, where people are wanting to say, hang on, you know, COVID hit, how did I move quickly into the cloud, and how do I start leveraging the cloud? So you'll see here, sort of cloud on-ramps are kind of growing on an ongoing basis. A trend that we're seeing now as something new that's starting to happening is we're starting to see a lot of, if you call it the cloud underdogs, are starting to emerge and wanting to invest, which is then starting to grow a whole bunch of multi-cloud connectivity. And that's why you'll see, like US, there's over 188 different cloud on-ramps that you as a customer can connect to. So IXPs, so this is the saying in the peering world, we call it up and to the right. So basically it means your traffic is constantly moving to the right and growing. So you'll see in terms of Africa, there's over 46 active IXPs. Funny enough, our ASN, so for any of you who weren't at the Afrinic talk, so Afrinic is very important for all of our futures. So in terms of Africa, we've got over 922 active ASNs and growing. This is an important number because this still shows that active networks in Africa are a lot smaller than a Europe and a US and an Asia, but we're starting to emerge in terms of having more and more networks available. And then in terms of NAT traffic, so this is kind of what happened to us in COVID. So you'll see it took us 8 years to get the exchange to 1 terabit per second. COVID hit, we pretty much doubled that traffic. And it was it literally was a wave of traffic. And we looked at the international stats of South Africa or Africa versus Europe. So Europe had about a 37% increase in internet traffic. Africa had over a 47% increase in traffic. And the question is why? And it literally is, and it's such a phenomenal thing from an LSM perspective, because we wanted to see as well, you know, how do we cater for it from an infrastructure investment side? And if you look at the man at home before COVID, he would have, let's say, $200 in his back pocket, and that was used for food, and internet was seen as a luxury item. COVID hit, what happened? He had to change his mind very quickly, because in order for him to get the $200 to buy the bread, he needed an internet access line at home. So you suddenly saw this massive uptake of connections, and I'm sure a lot of you fiber and mobile operators felt it literally on an ongoing basis, and we saw it from the traffic side. So in terms of this trend, it hasn't stopped. So we're now sitting at nearly 3 terabits of peering traffic, and we're seeing it grow. I mean, we had one of our members who's now upgraded to 700 gig of traffic. You know, I didn't think in my life I would ever see a request like that, but they've sent through a request to upgrade to 700 gig. And then today, someone was asking me, when are we doing 400 gig ports? You know, and you start thinking, when are you actually going to start having to cater for this from an infrastructure and budget point of view. So this is what ISOC, they did a study called the 80-20. So what the 80-20 initiative is around 80% of African traffic staying in Africa and 20 going overseas. So pretty much in terms of who's achieved this, the only country that's achieved this so far is South Africa. Kenya, Nigeria are getting close to it, and then the other countries are having to start working towards this initiative. And this is really, really important for our end users and who we all hear and talking about and how we get people connected, because we don't want this traffic going all the way to Europe and coming back again. It adds latency, it adds costs, to all of us. So effectively, we're all on this big drive to kind of see how do we keep this traffic local, how do we get this investment on our shores. So one of the ways to do it, and I like this slide, it's a little bit close to my heart as well, is remembering our heroes. And there's a number of heroes who've made a good stand in terms of peering. And the way that our networks have actually been built, you know, we never thought we would have faced the pandemic that we face today, or and still face today, but you know, last year and the year before, is that we kind of, and we all sat there as engineers and we said, you know, you're never going to build a network that's going to face this kind of drama. You know, are we over-investing? Are we doing all these sorts of things? Suddenly March, you know, a couple of years ago hit, and the network stood the test of time. All of our networks did. So I think, you know, at the social that Carl is paying for all our drinks, I think we can have 3, you know. Because we all worked hard during that time to keep people on and keep their livelihoods going. So Forbes magazine says, you know, we're the next frontier in terms of Africa. I say there's still a lot of work to be done. So there's a lot of work in terms of terrestrial fiber networks that need to happen, in terms of power, some renewable energies. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, which to get those people, the end users, online and access to more content on an ongoing basis. So I tried to make it as fast as I nearly could. So South Africa, so our investment boom continues. So you saw from our side, we've had a big investment from Digital Realty, which is phenomenal to see that kind of money hitting the shores. You're seeing a number of organizations starting to invest a huge amount in terms of mobile infrastructure, fiber infrastructure, subsea cable infrastructure. And that's kind of the end of our story. And we're hoping that this will continue. I tried to keep it quick. The lady was waving at me at the back, so to catch up time. But yeah, does anyone have any thoughts or questions that you sort of want to raise on this? Awesome. Thanks, guys.